Casting with Kerry Jones.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. Well, following on from last week's episode, which was the first part of the Christmas special, which included first half of 2024 guests, this week's episode is part 2. I want to take another selection from all my guests for the second half of this year. And what another great year it's been. A milestone for me with 200 episodes and reaching the 4-year mark. And for most of us, this time of year is time to put the rods up, and we probably won't get them back out until March or so. So what better way to pass the winter months, especially over Christmas, is have a look back at the episodes from 2024. So sit back and relax with a glass of your favourite malt or pint and enjoy. Merry Christmas, everyone. Episode 193, Scott McKenzie.
Born and bred, kind of brought up in Inverness. I got into, when I left school, I actually I worked for the Royal Mail. I was a postman on a bike, and I always liked, or was very keen, kind of fishing, shooting, and so at the age of 20, I got the chance of a job in the far northwest of Scotland, a very remote location up near a place called Lough Corrib, right in the extreme far northwest tip of Scotland. And so for first 20 years of my life, I was from Inverness, and then for the next 20 odd, I was a gillie right round Scotland. I was very fortunate in as much as I learnt a lot. I was very keen salmon angler on the River Ness, which is quite a big river that flows through Inverness.
Yeah.
But when we went to the far northwest of Scotland, I caught the tail end of the sea trout fishing. I was up there in the late 80s. I caught the tail end of the last of the good sea trout fishing before the kind of fish farming industry kind of, they all died off, the sea trout. So, and I fished some of the famous lochs up there, Lough Hope, Lough Stack, and used a form of fishing called dapping, and also we had several spate rivers on the estate as well. So it was a far different approach to what I was brought up with, which was on the slightly bigger Scottish rivers. So and also for brown trout, we had over 60 named hill lochs on the estate I was on.
Wow.
So it was a good way of kind of seeing different angles of fishing.
186, Niall Gelston.
It was quite good. My duck fly was a lot better than it was last year. It was pretty tough for me last year in the duck fly, but this year it was good. I was picking up a good few fish. Now the best day we had to the boat was 12. Not a massive number, but still, it was still a great number to get for duck fly. Now we've had better before, but and especially going off the back of it last year, where it was very bad for me. It was great to pick up a couple of fish, I suppose. And that time of the year, you're so excited coming into the duck fly. You've been dreaming of buzzer fishing for nearly 6 months, if not longer. And you just want everything right, and you just want to be on the lake as much as possible. But yeah, no, it was okay. Like, it was patchy at times, and then it kind of picked up. Our best day this year was pretty much we had a storm on the Corrib, couldn't go out fishing, and it was the day after the storm. We were like, we need to get on that now, because that's going to store everything up, and it's going to bring on the hatch. And surely enough, we were right. And that day we went out, it was crazy. Now we should have had a lot more fish. There was a lot of fish lost and takes, and it was mad. And even like we still managed to boat 12 fish, but we could have nearly doubled that in the amount of takes we got, because it was crazy. All the bays were just going at the same time. We were nipping in and out, resting a spot, coming back to it, picking up a fish, going to another spot, so we were kind of just zigzagging around the place, which I think was on Easter weekend. The fish was really good, and then as soon as it came in, it was gone. The duck fly this year. It didn't really stick around, in and out real fast. Sometimes it does drag out an extra week or two, and you might pick up a bay that goes later than others, and you might get good fishing on it. But it was good, but it just wasn't as good as other years,
189, Melvin Wood. Just after your trip, well, I think it must have been a week or two after, I shared a boat with Kevin Sheridan.
Yes.
And he said, have you heard of the Melvin method? He said. And he told me about your big fish. It was a double, wasn't it?
It was.
So what was the story behind that then? You had a couple of days there, yeah?
I had probably 4 days in total there. Yeah, I had a day with Dominic Kerrigan as well.
All right.
Which was quite fruitful. I had a 10, a 7, a 4, and a 2. And
all on the Melvin method?
All on the Melvin method. So you want to know about the Melvin method?
Well, actually, you did tell me, and Kevin did on the day, when I fished with him.
Right.
But it's quite something, because all the last couple of seasons, just nymph fishing is big out there, isn't it? It's probably been fishing. There are certain people who've been doing it for years, but for one reason or other, the last 2 seasons especially, everyone is fishing the mayfly nymph, and I can see why, because probably for every fish we see come up for a dry mayfly, there's probably 50 below taking nymphs.
Absolutely.
And I think the tactic is having confidence in doing what the certain method. And most people are fishing floating line, maybe a sink tip, midge tip. But you did something totally different, didn't you? You were a dive 5, was it?
Well, we're talking. I was talking to you about this on the last podcast we did.
Yeah.
In the fishing in Ireland is changing. All you needed was a floating line 20 years ago. Well, that's not the case now.
195, autumn tactics. What I find, autumn time, well, you do get still a bit of warmth in the air and the water, but it's all slowing down. You can see it's going to sleep. The lake is going to sleep. It's getting cold. The fish are active, and these fish now are really hungry. All the hatches have come and gone, and the warmer temperatures, and maybe put them off the feed a bit. But when that water starts getting colder and the autumn is coming, these fish are hungry, because they know the temperature's getting colder, and they know probably the winter's on the way, and they want to pack on weight. There's no food around, so the fish you find are less fussy. And over the last few seasons, especially at the autumn time, because there's not a lot of fly life around, I've had a lot of success with snakes. Now, the reason I chose a snake, there's 2 reasons a trout takes a fly. 1, he thinks your fly is food, and 2, through aggression. So there's imitator patterns and there's attractor patterns. Now, because there's not a lot of fly around and the winter's coming, I thought give him something worth going for, something big. So I have had a lot of success with snakes. But the problem with snakes is the hooking isn't that great. For every one you catch, I can guarantee one will come off, maybe 2. 184, Keith McDonnell.
Put a lot of time into it with my pal Kieran, kind of narrowing it down, and I've found some really good fish. But it's one thing to find them; the rest of the stuff has to line up too. But anyway, so the swans are driving me crazy, and then things came right, and I hooked this big fish, and I lost him fairly quickly. I was gutted, and so I hung around there for a couple of evenings afterwards, just waiting for him to come back, and eventually he started feeding, and the way you get really excited. And I fluffed the first cast, and because I was so close to him, I was stuck. I was stuck in the grass on the bank, so I had to pull that out, leave the fly there, retie, right? And he was going absolutely, what I say, bickies. He was really taking a lot of fly. Got the fly tied on with shaky hands, etc., and was just about to cast, and 6 swans landed right on top of the fish and started fighting. So that was that. That was the end of that. But anyway, I managed a few nice fish, kind of 4 pounds, 5.5 pounds, that sort of thing. But that one would have been off the charts.
Really?
I'm not sure exactly what he weighed, but yeah, he was a really big fish. Oh, the bit I left out about it was that there was one fucker of a swan, the male swan. You see, this seemed to be an argument between two families of swans, and so the lone male swan, he got left behind, and he actually even followed me all the way down the river on the way out. It was like a kick in the bollocks.
188, Jason Williams. But you find the key is, what is the difference? The way of fishing you are to me, both got more or less the same flies, same tactics, but you've got your sunglasses.
Yeah, I got the Feather Costa fantails on. Glass ones,
So you were seeing a lot more.
I see much
fish.
more, yeah, much more than you, yeah.
And you were covered in fish.
You've got to. Every fish I see, I cast to. I won't cast otherwise unless I see a fish,
Yeah.
Pointless otherwise.
So there's no point just casting?
No, it's not like trout. Not like trout, just cast out and leave it there. You can't do that. You might get an odd small carp, but it's wasting your time. You've got to see fish and cast in front of the fish,
Yeah.
Got to meet that in front of the fish if possible.
They take it before it reaches the depth?
As it's reaching its depth, as it's coming, when it finds its level, you either take it straight away there or on the drop. But once it's found its level, you can forget it then and try again.
What is quite funny actually, when we started, there were 2 anglers, match anglers, well, carp anglers rather.
They got about 3 or 4 poles out, haven't they? Got poles out and...
Yeah, there's 4 there now. 4 anglers there now. And do you know what? I haven't seen them have a fish. I think they had one when I arrived. We probably got a couple of kilos of bait. And they haven't had a fish. And between us, we probably had 10 fish.
10, yeah. I don't mean long way.
No.
But it's great, man. It's great doing it without freebies and that, It's what I always think. You wouldn't go to the river and chuck maggots in with you. Then put a fly on it with you, so...
Yeah.
Well, I got nothing against it. People want to do it. Nothing against it. That's how we started doing it.
They're very active, these carp, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're swimming around, and they're swimming around. It's quite, I wouldn't say fast, but they're not slow, are they?
They're still spawning, Ceri, which is unusual. It's like, by now, it's all over. By, like, beginning of June, it's all over,
Yeah.
But, like, the last couple of weeks now, they're in pods of 5, 6s.
200, my story. I always had this urge. When I was 12 years of age, I always remember, I went from the junior school to the comprehensive, and there was a school teacher there then doing after class, or lessons, but like a little club, a fishing club. And I thought, I want to do this. So I went once or twice. I didn't have any gear, and I used to tie flies. And so my mother, when I come home, I want to start fishing. She didn't like the idea of it at all. And she said, oh no, and you're not having waders. She said, you'll drown and this and that. So it was a no from her. But I kept going to the class after. And I bought a fishing rod without telling her. And it was a blank with half-made rod, fiberglass, and the school teacher, Dave Roberts. I said, can I keep it here? Because I didn't want to go home to show the light. So I bought this rod. I think it was about £8 at the time. And I actually then, after the lessons, used to put rings on the rods. We used to whip it.
Wow.
And so I made my first rod, half made my first rod. But I didn't have a reel. And there was a boy then in school. He was selling a reel. And I remember it was a rimfly king size, I think it was called. And it was a £5. So I paid him a £5 for this reel. Came home. And as a kid, as a 12-year-old, I was big into what's called Sabutio. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, definitely remember Sabutio.
Yeah. And I had a cupboard full of teams. So he smuggled this reel into the house and hid it behind the teams. And anyway, from that then, I told her what I had done. And I think she found it. So I went once or twice. And the funny thing was then, you know, I was successful. I instantly came good to it. You know, I was in that. You could say at that age, you become natural to things a lot easier than when you're older. And then she was telling the neighbours then, oh, Ceri got a trout today. And so she warmed to it then, you know. So that was it. And then my first day actually fishing went to a place called Eglwys Nynydd Reservoir. It's still going today. And I went with a teacher, and there was a gang of us, probably about 5 of us. It wouldn't be allowed now. A school teacher taking 5 children in a car, and there were 2 in the front seat. It was a chaos. And we loved it. And I had 3 fish. The very first fish I hooked, I lost. I was excited. And it just came off. It was too tight. But after that then, I had the bug good and proper then. 190 Lough Corrib. So then, this was quite an experience for me, the next bit of fishing we did. I could see, we were in between, again, the 2 river mouths. And then all of a sudden, I could see a current in front of me, almost like a river. But we weren't at the mouth of the river. We were probably about 80 yards, maybe more, away from the Deriana River coming in. But I could see a current. It was exactly like fishing a river. So at this point then, we didn't do the loch style. Neil decided to hold me off again like we did before. This method, which we fished earlier on, fishing for the salmon. And it's almost like fishing a river then. Now, it was quite surreal fishing a loch and seeing this current coming alongside. Now, what was happening, Neil was explaining, the water was coming down from the Deriana into the lake. So there was a flow coming into the lake. But then the wind was blowing up into facing the rivers. So he was pushing the current back around the corner into the bay to the side. So this was quite surreal. It was literally like fishing a river on a loch. So we were fishing away and he was holding. And instead of moving along the shore this time, there were 2 submerged rocks. And this is where the skill which Neil has as a boatman. He knew, just like the river and the way the current is flowing, there'd be salmon at these rocks. So we fished it and fished it. He holding the boat more or less in the same spot throughout. And I was casting. And I tried my floater. And then nothing again for about half hour. But we didn't move. We just stayed persevering. Because he believed, he said, I know there's salmon here. So we fished and we fished, or I fished. Next thing, a salmon leapt, probably about 8 pound plus, I would say, right next to the boat, or right next to these rocks, actually. So he was right. The salmon lived there all right. And there was a hint of purple in it. But purple salmon matter, I didn't mind at all. So we decided then, right, to swap rods. I tried his intermediate line to take it down a little bit to see if that would make a difference. And he was sure not just one salmon would have been there. You see one salmon, that's a good sign. There's going to be more. There could have been 5, 6, 10, 20 salmon, who knows. So I tried the intermediate line then with 2 flies. And I knew time was getting on. So we cast across the current. Long pulls. And about third cast in, just before I lifted off, the fish took. Bang. 198. Alan Rees. It's nice to collect certain materials and feathers, to have it all around you at hand.
Well, there's beauty in nature, isn't there? And, you know, we can't better nature, but we can utilise some of those materials to create something that will resemble what nature intends, really. If they then go to fool a fish...
It's so easy, accessible to get these things now, isn't it? Like when we started, obviously it was 1 or 2 mail order, but you couldn't see them, and you can access everything now, any different feathers and furs. But I bet you I've been to your place and you've got every feather going. But I bet there's one bird you haven't got.
Go on.
And I have.
Go on.
Budgie.
No. I got some canary there. I got some pink parrot. I got some African parrot. But I haven't got any budgie. Because
when I started, I mentioned before, you were just getting feathers, fur, anything, any material to tie a fly. Because, that's all you could do then. And then we had my sister, yellow one and blue one, so I just used those feathers as well. Yeah. And my auntie kept peacocks, so I had no end of peacock feathers. So you just made the most of it. But
and you make a good point there now, right? Many of today's flies are real in-your-face items that never appear anywhere in nature. Nowadays, people tend to overcomplicate things. I mean, look at the jowlbark, right? There's nothing simpler than it's red cock hackle fibres and peacock herl. Nowadays, they've got different types of ribs, holographic, jungle cock, and, you think, well, that simple fly used to catch fish.
And do you remember when we used to actually tie flies? I didn't have a bobbin holder even then.
No.
Peg.
Oh, you had a peg. I used to sit on mine. And my first vice was an engineering vice because I didn't have a fly tying vice. Yeah, I used to break some hooks because it was so big and I'd just squash them,
Something which I still do to this day from day one is I've never used a whip finishing tool.
Right.
I just use it by hand.
Yeah.
Because I find it just was convenient without the tool, to be honest.
When it comes to tools now, there are lots of tools to do a lot of things. I think the finest tools are the fingers on the end of your hands.
Now, as we're on to the fly tying theme, I know for months now, probably about a year perhaps, is it? I've been chatting to you about it. You've been working on getting a YouTube channel up and running.
Yeah. Well, it's been a long time coming, actually, because...
191, Paddy Gargan.
But when I was growing up on Sheelan, it was always evening fishing. And of course, there wasn't the mayfly hatch that there is now. The mayfly was practically gone. I remember you might see 2 mayfly in the season down around Crover, but
really,
the anglers in Sheelan went to Lough Corrib and they took back mayfly in tea chests that had hatched and they put them out on Sheelan and over a period re-established the mayfly hatch. But in my time there, it was evening fishing buzzers and dry buzzers in the evening.
Well, when I went this year, I was out with a guy, Kevin Sheridan. We had an evening. And even though I fished it many years ago, it was the first time I fished it again since that gap. And the mayfly hatch, the best way to describe it was biblical.
Yeah.
It was truly jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
Are they the same mayfly linked to the July hatch? Or are they totally different?
No, they're the same species, but they just have a second hatch in July, on Corrib anyway. There's some studies going on at the moment about the biology of mayfly on Corrib done by Ken Whelan, but they can start hatching in April on the Corrib, and generally the hatch is over. The main hatch is over by early June, and then a second hatch comes. Used to say here it was traditionally, and when the Galway races were on, which would be the last week in July, you get the second hatch of mayfly.
201, Brad Gare. So if I was to ask you, what would be your go-to flies then? Say the top 4 flies, you can say, would be the ones you would go to. If someone gave you 4 flies to last the season, what would you be?
So probably to pick a dry, it would be a yellow owl. That would be one. I mean, it's probably the best dry fly in my box, you know. I've got them in all kinds of sizes and different variations. Number 2 would probably be a kind of mirage cormorant, you know, nothing fancy. 3, probably a tequila fab, you know. A tequila fab's just like, or a tequila blob, or even in a booby, you know. Any variation of tequila is always going to catch fish. And then on the dark side, I'd probably fish a snake, you know. If I'm on a pleasure day, you know, you've got to have a snake on at some point, and again in various colours. I like
the snake is a great pulls fish. But hooking is not really good, is it?
A lot of people say kind of as they struggle with hooking fish on it and kind of get a few mistakes. To be fair, I fish it quite a bit throughout the winter and kind of winter competitions and things in it. Yeah. Okay, you drop a few fish, but unfortunately that's the way of it. You know, you've got to take. Really, if you had a day where you converted every take, it would be. Yeah, it's a great fly to find a fish, I think. And I think even if, you know, you're pulling fish, you're misting fish, I think when you know they're there, you can change then. Yeah, definitely. It's great fly for locating fish, and it certainly would be. We use them quite a lot when we go down to so the pairs, for fast male pairs, you're allowed to fish, and it's not international rules, so you're allowed to utilise the snake, but we use it in practice, and it's definitely a good fly for locating fish, you know, good fish locator, and then you can kind of fine tune the tactics for there, and you know, as you say, try and get a fly that's going to provide you some more hookups.
Yeah. Bonus episode, Talabont Ghost. He then pulls his bag, which is hanging on his shoulder, around to the side. A lovely old canvas bag. And as he lifted the bag, he pulled out the fly box. And as he opened the fly box, I could not believe it was full of old traditional patterns, regimented all in neat rows. All probably 14s and 12s. I wish I took a picture of it. And he took an all out, handed it to me, and said, give it a try. So by now, the light was going. It must have been about 8:30, going on to 9. I shook his hand, which is cold, and said, I hope to meet again. So I turned my back, waded back into the lake, which wouldn't have been 30 seconds or so. I looked down the shore, and he wasn't there. It was then it hit me that something wasn't right about this. Was it a spirit? Was it a ghost? Because there was no footprints in that mud, because when I walked back then, after fishing, along the shore, there was no footprints at all, and there was no car on the far side. 199, Stevie Munn.
But I think the fly tires, like, you know, the social media side of it, it's definitely brought the fly tying community closer together, and I think it's up to everybody's game a bit too, you know. And it's an easier platform to show your skills than fishing. I mean, fly tying is just, it's accessible. Of course, very, very accessible to everybody, you know. There's an amazing standard there now, mind, isn't there? I mean, like, different level. Frightening. I tied a lot of flies, and I tied commercially at one time when I was young. Yeah. And I just look at the flies now and think, my God, you know, some of the artists out there, like, you know, really too nice to put on a fly on a line. No, that's a problem. Yeah. You know, on the materials you can get now. Aye, of course, all them genetic materials and stuff. Yeah. You know what I mean? But then you have to also remember, like, if you're using a fly as a fishing fly, or using it as a fly for a fly to look at, because sometimes you don't want your hackle too stiff, you know. You do, you know, and You know, sometimes you need a softer hackle just to sit in the water film or something. You know, some of the best dry flies I've come across were tied with softer hackles. You know, so they're sitting on a surface film. You know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm all for most of my flies are hen hackles. I don't know about cock hackles. I don't do a lot of well, for still waters now. Even when the fishing dries, there rather a bit of movement in the dries on the rivers. It's different, I suppose. You need the cock hackles. 192, Corrib and Claret. So we started the drift, and the conditions were good, and then all of a sudden, things got really good. And if you imagine, the three of us are in the boat, and we're having a laugh and a chatting about all sorts of things, and then all of a sudden, the wind softened slightly, and you had rolling waves, white slicks to my side, and the light changed. Looking over our shoulder towards Mount Gable, they could see the sun starting to lower, and big bank of dark cloud coming in. We all looked at each other, and it was quite special, quite spectacular. And we knew what was going to happen. We knew our confidence came up. The sky went black. The wind softened, almost like a mercuryness to the water. And then a hint of the sun grinning through some of the clouds which were breaking up over the shoulder in the distance, were lighting up the shallow, the spit that was going all the way down to the Inchigill, glowing like golden yellow, a line going all the way down our left-hand side. And it was a perfect drift. And to my side, there were some lovely white slicks. You couldn't make a better condition. So once we could see the light was changing, the chat stopped, and we were concentrating. And as we could see things happening, we looked at each other with a knowing the things were going to happen. The greyness in front of us and the contrast, the lake and the wind was silky smooth, and we just knew we had to be switched on now. So the three of us there now, casting our lines down the wind, no chatting. The only sound is the waves lapping against the boat, and our lines just kissing the water as they land in front of us. Pull, pull, pull. We pull in the wet. 196, Russell Llawen.
Nice fish. Well, before we carry on chatting about Llawen, congratulations having gold again on the airflow up in Rutland. Were you feeling confident before you went?
Yeah, I think we know we've got sort of a good chance whenever we go up there. And a couple of reasons why we've got an exceptional team, but we've also sort of understand the moods of Rutland. I think after many years of being up there, but there are some great teams. Our main rivals at the minute, Menteith Ospreys. We said if we go up there, if we beat them, we'll be there or thereabouts. So they were our main rivals up there, and they were in the springtime as well. They pipped us in the spring for the spring invitational. But yeah, they're really good anglers, good lads. But we are confident. Yeah,
it was a tough competition.
Yeah, it's always tough. I said to Gus before we went up, I said, when was the last time that we didn't have a medal? And he couldn't quite remember the last time we didn't have a medal up there. So yeah, fairly confident of it. That's not. We put a lot of work in, and it's much like life, isn't it? What you put in, you get out.
Exactly.
So we put a lot of work in. We have a little bit extra practice, which goes a long way, long way up there.
Tell me how it with the practice. How many days before? Was it 2 days? Was it Wednesday and Thursday?
Tuesday, Wednesday match day is. We first rocked up there on the Thursday before the.
Jesus, you got a few days there.
Yeah, so a couple of us had 5 days. The other boys turned up Friday, so had 4 days. I think everybody had 4 days. I think practice. Which it's a big water, Rutland. You get to see it in different wind directions and different moods, and hopefully you got most of the hard work done the day before, so you're just confirming things around and seeing how it performs in different wind directions and different conditions. And
do you move if you found a spot, say if you saw like a yacht clump for instance, you knew there's fish there, there's no point staying there. You just
no, it's no point sort of staying on fish. No, I think they're giving too much away. No, you've got to monitor.
It gives you confidence, doesn't it?
Yeah, you've got to monitor. Are they still there? they do move. Fish have got tails. You know that from Llawen, running this place. But fish have got tails, so you have to understand where they go and how it reacts with wind. Do they run downwind? Do they upwind? Where's the food? Are they going to hold on the food? Are they going to move? What does boat pressure do to them? There's all these things, and I think it's an understanding of all that helps you to gain your edge.
197. What's in my Ferox box? Now, a lot of people talk about, he's got fish finders, he's finding the fish. No, you don't need a fish finder. I don't use a fish finder. In the early days, I used to use fish finders, but purely just to find the depths. Because whatever fish finders you have, wherever you go on the lake, there's fish. It'd make you dizzy looking at the screen all day. And what would you want to rather do? Look at the screen all day or look at this magnificent scenery around and looking at the rods, waiting for that take. So after, I would say 2 years, maybe 3 years max, I learnt that the areas I fish, I know the depths of them. So if you're going to get a fish finder, get the cheapest one you can find. Like the one I've got, I still have it. It's called a Cuda 128. I'm not sure how much I paid for it, but it's basic. And it shows 3 different sizes of fish. And it did the job. But I would never chase the fish. If I think, there's fish there because it's on the screen, it would drive you nuts. Just look at the areas where there's drop-offs. And that's all I wanted to know. There are certain things you don't want to cut corners on. Probably when it comes to rods, you don't have to get these expensive rods. But the other stuff, things like a good net. I used to have a standard trout net, which is, I think it was Daiwa at the time, and which is comfortable to have like a 5-6 pound fish in. But I remember one of the first big fish I had, and he was 14 pound. Playing this fish, and I was looking, as I was playing it, I thought, it ain't going to fit in the net. And you can imagine the excitement I had and my adrenaline as I was playing this fish. And he was coming to the boat, and I was looking at the net, I thought, Jesus, it's not going to fit. Luckily for me, I managed to twist it and grab it and turn it and pull it up. And I did manage, luckily, to get the fish in. And I was, as you can imagine, I was over the moon. But the very first thing I did when I came home from that trip was to order a new net. Now, the net I have is a McLean's, I think it's a salmon net. And it is, I'm not sure the size of it actually, but it's big. A 20 pound trout will fit in it comfortably. 202, Jimmy Terrell. The one fly which you tie, which is the detached body one. I remember, it must have been 2 or 3 seasons ago when I called in to see you on the way up to the West. Used to give you a go, like, wow. I tell you what, that is, for me, the best dry mayfly. Nothing will touch it.
Yeah.
It's deadly.
Yeah. It's you have to really see it, don't you, on the water. When you see it on the water, and it's actually the way it sits up and everything. Because, like, I remember I told you, I got a 9 pound, the best fish I've ever. I got a 9 pound.
Was that the one with Johnny Lee, wasn't it?
Yeah, with Johnny, yeah.
Yeah.
A 9 pound, the best fish, and a beautiful looking fish. I'm not joking. Yeah, I've had some really, really good fish with that fly.
Well, I remember
a lot of other people. It's the biggest selling fly that I have, actually.
Well, you better tie a lot up because I love it. I'm going to make an order now before Christmas.
I look after you anyways. There's no problem. Because I'm doing the bodies anyway. I done a load of bodies there last week.
Oh, did you?
I just do probably 100 at a time, and then it's just a matter of putting the flies. The bodies is the biggest thing. Just make the bodies first, and then put the flies together.
Yeah.
But it's just the colour of it, I think, because I dyed a couple of grizzled saddles, and that shade. And I'm hoping I can still get that shade again, because when you're dyeing stuff, I don't do a lot of dyeing, but when you dye something, it's very hard to copy it twice.
Yeah. I got a complaint to make because on one of the flies, I think I've had about 19 fish in it now, and one of the tails has come out You don't make them like
Yeah.
you used to, they. And
Oh, yeah.
the tail came out after the 19th fish.
Well, you a tail on the fly.
When we fished, it wasn't last year before, I think it was. And we had a good day. We had a few fish. And then we went in for lunch then. You're only going to say, you know. And we went in for lunch. I got a kettle. And you went up the bank by this rock and sat down and got your box out and getting the sandwiches and whatever. And I picked up the kettle and I was walking to the water now to fill the kettle. And I could hear you shouting on a commotion. I looked over my shoulder and there was this like big full-grown swan attacking you, and you were on your back struggling.
I fell over in the way. Fell over in the waders. I had the waders halfway up, and I fell over on my back. And you got a lovely photograph of it as well.
I
didn't
did, yeah. Because it was like instead of coming over and helping you,
it looked like it was attacking me.
It was, yeah. And my photographer's head was thinking, "No, don't help. This makes a good picture." So just grabbed the camera then.
It did, yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed my Christmas episode. And also big thanks to all my guests which have appeared on the podcast the last 12 months. And a very big thanks to my Patreons. And if you haven't joined yet, please consider becoming a Patreon and helping the channel, where you'll get weekly podcasts and over 200 episodes, where you can listen to all of the podcasts which are on this Christmas episode. Well, that's all for now. And tight lines, and as always, may they always be up in the wave. Merry Christmas all.